Hi guys, welcome to China Perspective. My name is 𝗵𝗵𝗀𝗠𝗀 and you may know me as a German recruiter in Asia. Guys, today I want to talk about localization of Western supply chains in China. Or as I like to call it, how Western firms destroy their own market in China. Today I want to talk about this trend that's really reshaping Western companies operating in China, the localization of supply chains. I'll explain why this shift is happening, the benefits and the challenges it brings, how companies are navigating this complex landscape, and why this is a pretty big problem for Western companies. As a recruiter, the part that I love most about my job is that I get to go and visit my clients' factories. Their factories, their assembly plants, their showrooms, almost every day. And as a result of that, I get to speak to general managers or managing directors of Western companies in China. Most of them are also so kind to usually give me a little tour of their plant to have a look around. And something that I have really clearly noticed in the last year and a half or so is that more and more of the components I see in their production hall come from Chinese suppliers. How do I know? Very simple. Well, I see the boxes. It used to be that my average manufacturing client has machines and boxes with Western labels. A lot of the machines would also be my clients, so I can really easily recognize them. And now what I see is that most of the new equipment and a lot of the components coming out of boxes simply have Chinese labels. And so then I ask my GMs, okay, so what's going on? They say, well, we're localizing our supply chain. We need to save cost. And so what's going on? Let's start with the big picture. Historically, Western companies came to China for one out of two reasons, maybe for both. First of all, to leverage the vast manufacturing capabilities that China has, and secondly, to sell to the massive domestic market. Many of the OEMs, ranging from Volkswagen to Siemens to Bosch, really, you could say, strongly encouraged their own suppliers to also come to China. So 10 to 15 years ago, because yes, I've been a recruiter in China that long, I would often speak to first and tier suppliers across industries, and the conversation would look like something like this. They would say, hey Miriam, we are coming to China. Please help us with the recruiting of our first China team, our first crew for our plant, our first sales man or woman. And then I would ask, okay, yeah, why are you coming to China? And they would reply, well, we have to. If we do not have operations in China, then our OEM client is not going to work with us anymore. It's one of the requirements they have. And so they came. So this was about 15 years or so ago, and what we would today refer as the golden age for Western companies in China. But since then, the world has changed drastically. Not only has the global pandemic exposed vulnerabilities of global supply chains, we had factories shutting down, we had ports being clogged up, businesses have faced unprecedented delays. We also have geopolitical tensions between China and the US, for example, trade war, export restrictions from sourcing or shipping to certain regions, making it riskier and costlier. Consumer expectations have shifted too. Chinese customers now demand faster delivery and products tailored to local preferences, pushing companies to rethink their strategies. The last 2 years have brought sinking revenues, lower market share, quite low profit margins for many, many Western companies across the board. Many foreign firms are having a hard time in China at the moment, maybe with the exception of FMCG, a few select industries, everything that's related to health and well-being. Those are doing quite well right now. It's February 2025, but overall cost saving and cost reduction is a big trend of the time. And at the same time, the quality of the Chinese suppliers has greatly increased, very often hitting somewhere around 70, maybe 80% of the quality or technological benefits that a foreign company can bring. But at the same time, they maintain their price advantage. That means they're still at half price or at least significantly cheaper than the foreign products, which are often in a premium field. And faced with cost-saving pressure and lower alternatives, which are absolutely good enough, the decision is easy for many general managers. In the past, localization was a strategy, and now localization has become a necessity, simply for survival. Let's take, for example, one of my clients. So this is a German automotive supplier, have been in China for some time. Before the pandemic, they would import somewhere around 60% of the components from Europe, and the rest they bought predominantly from other Western firms, also in China. But the auto industry right now is under great pressure, and it trickles down from the OEM down the value chain. So the Western OEMs are selling less and less cars, and Chinese automotive companies such as BYD, XPeng, and so on are taking the cake. So what happens? The OEMs need and want to save money, and therefore they start to exchange some of their Western suppliers with local suppliers. Then their suppliers see a large chunk of their revenue or one of their key customers not coming back. So that amplifies the cost-saving pressure. So what do? Exactly. They also localize their supply chain. And so it really trickles down Also add to that the additional developments that over the last few years, many Westerners, many foreigners have left China. And decision makers for Western firms are now often Chinese nationals. It's very easy for them and natural to find alternatives to their foreign suppliers and replace them with Chinese ones. So we have a common example where we say, if you have two Western companies and both have a Western GM, they are quite likely to do business with each other. If you have the same two companies and one is a Chinese GM and one is a Western GM, they are less likely to do business. And if you have the same two Western companies and both are Chinese GMs, they are not as likely to do business anymore. And the reason is that it is quite easy for them to have their own networks, their own pool of resources. That being said, localization has clear benefits. Resilience, for example, by sourcing and manufacturing locally, companies really reduce their exposure to global disruptions and market or industry downturns locally in China. There's also a lot less risk of geopolitical issues, which are to be expected, especially in this year, if you do not have to import anything into the country and you can just buy it locally. There's also an advantage for cost efficiency. Import tariffs, shipping costs, currency fluctuations, all of those add layers of expenses, which you could save. Local suppliers still often provide a very competitive pricing, especially as China's manufacturing ecosystem continues to innovate. There's also the matter of market alignment. Localization allows companies to respond faster to the unique demands of Chinese customers. For instance, localized R&D teams can design products that really resonate so much better with the local need, while the local production enables a rapid deployment. However, there are also downsides. It is not easy to find reliable partners. Working with local suppliers requires building trust and ensuring quality standards. This is not a quick process. At the same time, there are very valid reasons for intellectual property concerns. Companies often worry about protecting proprietary technology when working with local partners. Overall, the matter of trust comes into play. Many of the new suppliers are formed by somebody who has previously worked in a foreign supplier company and then just started their own business. And while they very often, they really can get their same quality as what the foreign supplier, the foreign employer did previously. But the question is, will they be able to innovate and keep the quality on par in the long term with what the company is needing? Only time will tell. So what does it mean? The main issue I see for foreign companies is that they're destroying their own business in China. Let me explain. The less foreign companies buy from other foreign companies, the less market share foreign companies will have. Many Chinese firms will only buy foreign products at a premium price if it's in a highly relevant field, a very specific field. But even those areas, those niches, are going to be expected to shrink in the next couple of years. So what can companies do? You're in between a rock and a hard place, really. If you're leading a company in China, it is recommended to build stronger relationships with Chinese stakeholders. If you can innovate faster to meet market demands, try to sell to Chinese companies, even though that is not easy. Mitigate risks as much as you can. If you are in the headquarters and you're watching this, I would really like to encourage you to allow your China daughter more independence and more autonomy, to innovate close to the market, to set their own prices. Don't insist on having them do everything as you do it at home in the headquarters and maybe have been doing for the last 150 years. So because that is just unfortunately missing the realities that your China GM has to deal with every day. And I know that hurts and I know nobody's happy to hear it, but if you want to run your China business how you've been running it the last 10, 20 years, you are setting yourself up for quite the challenges down the road. Another point, if you don't already have, really please make sure to have your service team inside of China. The long waiting periods of days or even weeks are simply unacceptable in China. We are working in China speed. That's like dog years. 24 hours is a long time. So your customers in China, I'm sorry, but they don't care if it's August and everybody's on holiday. They don't care if it's somebody's annual leave. They will simply switch to a different customer. So really, please be willing to embrace it. The large majority of Western firms are not going to be able to compete with Chinese companies on price, and neither should they. But if you can allow for some wiggle room, for example, for products and not going for the fully fledged version of 100% functionality, but something a little bit watered down at a more competitive price point, most customers probably don't use all 100% of what your machine can do. I would also encourage you to manage your expectations. Please understand that the times of the grand economic miracle in China, because that is what it was a miracle over the last 2 decades, are over. We are not going to return to the double-digit growth. And if that is what you are looking for and expect in order to make China worth it for you, then please reconsider and adjust your expectation. The country has moved from a developing stage with fast growth to a mature stage with slower growth. I would also encourage you to look at your overall Asia strategy. The firms that I know who are doing okay or even well have either a in China for China approach. For this, you need salespeople, especially right now, or a in China for Asia approach, for which you also need salespeople, just a different kind of salespeople. If you have a in China for export to Europe approach, then I have concerns. Please also be mindful of your recruiting choices. Please think carefully based on your own company needs and your company plans for China and Asia, whether you want a Western GM or a Chinese GMs. Both profiles have advantages and disadvantages. Actually, I made a separate video about when should you localize your top management or not. You can find it in the YouTube channel as well. I hope you found this video useful. Do let me know in the comments what you think about localizing your supply chain, where your company is right now, maybe where it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, where it is today, and where you think the future will bring you. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you, and like and follow for more.